Hello and welcome to the Equestrian Mums Club podcast. We're your hosts, Sophie Conway and Katie Allen Clark, avid equestrians and recent first-time mums. Join us and a herd of other guests as we discuss the wild ride of parenthood and horse care together. Now it's time to take up the reins and walk on into our next episode. I will kick off. So, welcome to today's episode of the Equestrian Mums Club podcast. We are here with a lady that we know and have met and were incredibly impressed with on many different levels when we did meet her. And so we've asked her to come and speak to us today because we think that she's quite an inspiration. She is called Katie Powell. She runs Nodwood House Equine, which she set up herself. And she's also a wonderful mother of three. I met her when I was pregnant and nervous, and just watching her family and the way the kids are and how polite and lovely they are. I would just want to talk to you today, Katie, about how you bring them up and your past. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Can you, Katie, for the listeners, please just kind of introduce yourself, your family and where you are and what you do in a nutshell?
Yeah, might be quite a large nutshell, but I will be relatively brief. So, hi, I'm Katie Powell. I run Nodwood House Equine that's based in Surrey, not far from sort of Guildford Way. We're very lucky. We're surrounded by beautiful countryside, but have great access links. So we moved here a number of years ago now, and we built the equestrian centre from scratch. Literally fields, nothing here. And I moved here with my lovely husband, Anthony, and my three slightly smaller children at the time. They're now currently 14, 11 and 8, two girls and a boy in the middle. I've spent many years in the city before I made a switch into the equestrian industry, but I've ridden all my life. I started riding from the age of 4. I evented mainly, sort of put my brave pants on and did a couple of intermediates, but that was sort of where I topped out on my eventing days. In more recent years, all my riding has focused mainly on dressage, and at this stage my focus is very much dressage riding, and that's predominantly what I coach. So I've moved from a city life where we were based in London, and I travelled all over the world with my job. I was in financial media and sort of board level roles, so lots of responsibility and high stress. But my passion was always the horses. So how did I create a lifestyle where I could couple my passion with a business? And that was really my ambition, and that's always really been my ambition. And that's what we set about to achieve when we set up Nodwood as a equestrian and rehabilitation centre, which we moved to in 2019. A very cold December, which we moved in, and a few years later we have a thriving and successful business. So that's where we are at this precise moment in time. So it's been quite a journey over the last few years, but one that has been really, really interesting.
Katie, honestly, I'm actually a little bit shocked that I didn't know you were eventing first. Like, how did the switch from eventing to dressage go? Did you just decide that I'm not brave enough for this anymore, or why did you decide to go down the dressage only route?
I think eventers, we all sort of say, well, it's all about the cross country. Let's be honest, that's why we do it, right? Or that's why I did it. The speed, the adrenaline. But the dressage discipline I always loved. And most eventers would go, oh, let's just get through the dressage bit. But for me, it was something I always loved. And I think it's the foundation of all riding. And I really do believe that. I think initially I was time poor, and I think, could I really justify being away for sort of 4 days to do an event halfway across the country? Not so much like, but just having the time to do it. So I refocused on, I can ride a 5.5 minute test, and I can do that, and I can still manage to juggle my lifestyle. So there was a bit of that actually. There was this element of one day versus, a much shorter period of time. I can still compete, and still do what I love. But I think dressage really gets into your blood. I mean, it gets under your skin, and then everything becomes about dressage. So, I mean, the people will think I'm nuts, right? Because I was talking to someone the other day, and they don't. They think I'm nuts.
I do. I think you're nuts. I'm useless.
we were looking to buy a judge's box to go into our upgraded arena, which is already pretty amazing. But we're just adding some bits to it. And one of them is a judge's box. And the guy in the shop thought I was nuts. He had absolutely no idea what dressage was. And there I was trying to explain to him about what it is that we do. And I'm sure he still doesn't understand. But anyway, so to answer your question, it was because I love it. You've got to love it. But secondly, it was the time. Can I commit this level of time for the eventers? The fitting program alone, you'd really need to run, 2 or 3 of them and have a youngster coming through. So I admire people that are able to do that. But for me, I made a switch a number of years ago now. I think it's useful to have done the eventing piece. It makes you a different sort of rider.
So, Katie, I did know that you used to event, and I love eventing. That's what I really, really love doing. And if I could get any better at the dressage, then I would do it better. And I promise. And I don't know if you'll still have me, but I know we talked about me coming down for a few days and staying in that amazing place, that Airbnb you've got, and having some lessons with you. So you might be able to help me one day.
Anytime.
But the question, and this is kind of in a similar vein, but very, very different. You changed from eventing to dressage, but you also changed careers, and you had, you're a high flying business lady in the city. Like you said, you did all this traveling, and then you've moved and made equestrianism your career. What was your thinking behind that, and were the kids a big part of that decision making?
No, they were actually quite tiny at the time. For me, this was always a lifelong plan. How do I do what I love to do, and not have to be a slave to the corporate world? Now that's quite a big question, isn't it? How do you get there? How do you do it? And I think for me was, what is it that I want to do? Which part of the equestrian industry am I interested in? Where do I not have the skills? Where do I need to go and learn stuff? How long will that take me? What does my business plan look like? So it was very much through the lens of how you'd set up any other business. You need to really think about, what is it I want to achieve? How am I going to get there? And what skills do I need to acquire along the way? So I set out, that was my framework. I'm really, really passionate about horses and always have been. But I think there's a sort of view that if you haven't been in it since you were sort of 16, then you don't know. But I would really question that, because I think when you've been around horses and you've managed horses and you've had your own and you've done a huge amount with them, then you can learn new skills. And I think when you develop any business, you bring in experts as well. You can't be good at absolutely everything. So anyway, so I set about really investing a lot of time in learning about certain areas. I spent a lot of time with vets and physios. I did a lot of rehab studying over many years. This wasn't just wave of magic wand and 18 months later you're qualified as such. I put myself all the way through my BHS exams. I'm stage 4 BHS qualified. I've embarked on all my coaching examinations through the BHS and through British Dressage. So I'm a British Dressage recognised coach. I'm also a youth qualified coach, and I'm working on my assessor to become a coach assessor. That's something I'm doing at the moment. And in the future, I may look towards doing my judging exam. So for me, it's about progress, continuation. You've got to do one building block to do the next, to do the next, to do the next. But you've got to have a really clear end goal.
And Katie, I was going to ask you. So it sounds to me like you've just got a real love for learning. Through, like you've achieved so much in actually quite a short period of time, really. But was there ever a point where you thought, actually, I'm turning what was my hobby and my passion into effectively my job? Am I going to lose the love for it? Did you ever have that worry?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that has definitely happened on this journey at certain points where you're so invested. So, for example, I may have had like 20 client horses. My horses are put to one side because your focus is very much your client horses, because they've obviously taken the time and you're responsible for them. So there have been times through this journey where you thought, wow, I'm not actually doing enough. I'm not doing what I wanted to do. And that's where more recently I've scaled it down so I can focus much more on my horses. I sort of become a victim of your own success in a way, which is lovely, but you do have to make sure that you prioritize what you do want. Otherwise, I think when you have a certain personality style, you end up giving everyone else. You have to make sure you are able to achieve what you want to do. So So basically, I set out a goal. What do I want to achieve? And then I work my way backwards how I would get there. And this involved, studying on the train on the way to London, studying on an aircraft. It was a mid-term plan to upskill and change what I was doing.
It sounds quite familiar because we're actually having to do a lot of the same here. With this is only our part-time passion, but we're having to refocus all the time because we are so time poor, trying to do this and support other mums in the industry, as well as look after kids, look after horses, look after dogs, husbands, work, all of that sort of jazz. So totally understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's difficult. It really is. But you do. I think now my children are older. Like my oldest now is 14, and the people always say that cliche quite goes really quickly, and I'm like, not when you're in it, you're sleep deprived. You think, God, blimey, you can't imagine the next 2 years, but you do come out of that, and suddenly they're 14, and they're their own young lady, and it goes in a heartbeat. It really does. But I am now being able to enjoy everything that we've done and reap the benefits. So I think in the early days when you're setting up a business where you've got babies or toddlers and you're in it, it's almost like you can't escape anything. You've got so many pressures. My view would be if it's at all possible to pause even for 5 minutes and just take a breath and really think about what you've achieved. And that's really powerful. I was with one of my horses the other day, and you know what it's like. You're normally in a rush. You like put the rugs on, pick out the feet, whatever it is you're doing. And I actually just stood in the stable for 5 minutes and stroked his eyelids. That sounds really weird, and he just nuzzled into me, and I thought, wow, he doesn't know I've got to rush and go and pick the kids up. And that was a really special moment. And it was 3 minutes of his day. But actually, it was. I felt really. It was just a really nice moment because we're always rushing.
Katie, I resonate with what you've just said so much. And you're absolutely right. I think that just like you said, even if it's 5 minutes, just set it aside each day to take a breath, go and stroke or pat your horse, or sit on the floor with your baby and play with them, and just stop rushing around all the time. It's so true.
When people used to say you must enjoy every moment, you think, I've got puke down the top. I can't even go to the toilet without someone, wanting me. and you're telling me to enjoy it. You've got to be kidding me. But I have, and maybe it's taken me 14 years, but I have finally just slowed down a bit and said, whoa, hang on a sec. There are these little micro moments that happen during the day that are actually really special. And I think put down that ruddy phone, stop looking at Facebook and look at what's in front of you, because easy for me to say, I know, but I think it is quite.
No, it's the same. That micro moments comment that you said is true for anybody, even if you're just walking around a park, like with and the baby's finally gone to sleep, or you've had 5 minutes to actually paint your horse's hooves. Like, I love doing that. And,
Moment when you've got to sleep.
yeah, exactly. I just wanted to go back, Katie, to when you worked in London and you had Molly, who is your oldest now, and she's 14. So this would have been 14 years ago. As a first-time mum, and 14 years ago, the landscape was different, and the way women were treated was different. We're hopefully going in the right direction with everything. But did you feel any pressure to go back to work? And did you ever get the mum guilt thing?
Oh God, yes. God, where do I start with this? So I was working for a FTSE 10 company, and I was pretty much as senior as you could get. I was also still youngish, not that old. My lines might be showing. Female. Interestingly, whilst I was on maternity leave, of which I boldly said, I'll be back in 3 months. I'll be back in 3 months when, like that. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, I can't go back yet. And I did take, I think, 7 or 8 months, and I went back to my whole organisation had been reorganised whilst I've been on maternity leave. And another person who was actually female had decided to take over my entire area. All those politics and rubbish that goes on whilst your back's turned is quite frustrating, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. The politics at play in big corporates. So I did go back, and I had to have a nanny because I couldn't be in all those different places and be there for Molly. Unfortunately, that was the case. And I'll be brutally honest with you, I absolutely hated it. I remember the first day I cried all the way to London on the train. I got back quite late at night, and the nanny would just not even want to pass Molly over, and I found it heart wrenching, and it was a really, really tough time. There was guilt. Was I doing my job well enough? My whole area was being taken over. We'd had a reorganisation. I hated leaving her, but at the same time, I wanted to have some freedom back and drink a glass of wine without being disturbed. All of that stuff was happening.
I'm just warning you, we will cry, because we cry at pretty much every guest. But I'm feeling all the emotions for you right now. The hormones are still raging, apparently.
It is really tough, mate. I think sometimes on media, social media, you get a view that the mum just pops back to their size 8, whatever they were, and they put their suit back on and off they go to work and everything's fine. Now that may be the case for some people. It certainly wasn't the case for me. I felt guilty, and I found that journey quite difficult. I did it, and at that time, I'd also developed another business which went on to be very successful. And I'd sort of been setting that up on maternity leave with Molly. Yeah, not one for sitting around hoping something's going to come to me. I think that's the other thing. I think you really do have to keep occupied with things that interest you. I think that's really important.
One thing that I was going to ask you is we've sort of touched on you going back to work after having Molly, but where's Anthony in all this? Because I feel like we've met him. He's such a lovely, I hate this phrase, but hands-on dad. He's so present when he's with them. Like watching him is just so beautiful. But where was he in the early days with Molly?
So he was also in the city in the early days with Molly, and he was working for an investment bank. So very long hours in investment banking, so we were both on the train and both commuting and both travelling. So he was coming back at a similar time to me, and actually I have to say he didn't enjoy it either. He didn't like the whole nanny thing. He found that quite challenging. And at that stage, we had a conversation about the other business I was in the process of setting up. And then probably about a year after Molly was born, that's when I decided to step away from the city. And we both, and then we both went into this other business that I set up, both Anthony and I. Unfortunately, Anthony had a bit of a burnout in the city and suffered from chronic fatigue for a few years, whilst Freddie, number 2, was little. So we dealt with quite a lot of things going through with that. And during Freddie, when he was tiny, that's when I started developing all my equestrian skills and starting to do all my learning through his early stages. Meanwhile, Anthony was also coming out of the city, based mainly for health reasons. I think he found that stage really quite tricky. I think if you ask him, he would probably say he doesn't really remember some of those earlier stages, which is, not ideal. But I think the reality is, behind closed doors in any family, people are battling lots of different things. And that's why it's so important to cherish what we do have.
Yeah, and like you said, take stock as well and realize that before it happens. Like you said before, take those little moments. There will be so many people. There will be so many people listening to this. Hopefully, mums and dads, and thinking, God, yeah, I could be in that position as well. Like down the line at some point.
And it's really important to look after each other. I think it's very easy to focus all your efforts and energy on the children, but actually you were together as husband and wife or partners or whatever it is before the children arrived, and through our marriage, there's been ups and downs on both sides. But Anthony had a down period in that stage, and obviously it was my job to support him. Not saying it was easy, because obviously he had at that point 2 small children and me doing a career change. But you've got to be a team, you've got to be in it together, and you've got to support each other's passions. And I have to say, Anthony's been amazing. He supported me all the way through this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have done it without him.
And like Katie said, like KAC said, he is seeing him with the kids is amazing, and the way how present he is with them, and how much they adore both of you is really lovely to see. Talking of the kids, so fast forward now to now, they all ride, don't they? And Molly has, not only is she an unbelievably talented young rider, but she's also built an amazing following on Instagram and socials. And I wanted to touch on this because it's something that scares me now a little bit. I've got a daughter, and it's unavoidable for the future. But how do you help to protect them from social? And this is a genuine interest question.
I think that's really interesting, because you use the word protect. I look at it in a slightly different way, in the sense that we have this level of trust, and I've never restricted access to things with them, but we have absolutely spoken about what's right and what's wrong. And the reality is, you cannot protect them from stuff that's there. If they want to find something, they will find it, I think, because if it's not on their phone, it'll be on their friend's phone. And I definitely, in the very early stages with Molly, when iPads were probably just coming out, you're like, oh no, you mustn't have it, you mustn't use it. But we've got to be honest, kids are born pretty much with some sort of device in their hand. So I think it's more about how do they respect it and how do we trust them not to be looking at stuff or being looking at stuff they shouldn't or talking to people they shouldn't. And I think that really does come down to open and honest conversations that we've had on a regular basis. Don't get me wrong, we have a filter on our system at home. Stuff can't get through that they shouldn't be looking at, but it doesn't stop, them perhaps having chats with people online that you don't want them talking to. So I think it's making them really aware of it, knowing that when we say it's bedtime, those items get switched off and put down. If they don't, I am quite strict, they get confiscated. So they learn to respect that they're allowed it for a period of time, and then it has to be switched off. No phones at the table. We always have dinner every single night as a family unit, and I don't want to see a mobile phone. There's boundaries, basically.
Yeah, I think what you said about the trust element, that's the key, isn't it, really? If they trust you enough to tell you what's happening and to make sure that as long as you know, that's better than anybody going off and doing it on their own, because that's so much more dangerous.
Yeah, and I think
they're going to anyway.
I think we're also really present in their lives. And we're very lucky to be able to do that. And this was part of the lifestyle change and the business change.
Yeah.
Auntie and I collect them pretty much every day from school. One of us will do the school drop off, one of us will do the pick up. We have a chat in the car. We're very present, we're very there. And I think that's really important. And I know that not everyone could be in that same position, but yeah, the trust piece is really important. I do on occasions check their phones. I do have a little look through. Not so much with Molly, but with Poppy being only 8. But you cannot get away from it. And I think when we are constantly, let's be honest, we pick up our phones, we're probably checking something like, our emails have come in, or a business question, or someone wants to ask me about, I had a call earlier about the rehabilitation query, and could I help them with something specific about their horse. So we're checking that all the time. So for us to then say to our children, you can't use it, would be almost contradictory.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Katie, I find that really hard myself, in that I really don't want to program Rafe to think that a phone is always attached to your hand. But it is really, really difficult when, like you say, you're trying to be with them, be present, but also run a business at the same time on the side, run like your lives and house admin, and speaking to people that are coming to do the garden or fix the boiler or whatever it happens to be. It's just so hard to not have that phone in your hand. But maybe setting those allotted times where you're just totally focused on family is the way forward.
Yeah, and in our situation, it's dinner times, no phones. Bedtime, the rule, they're switched off, and there are parameters, and I think that's really important. But we can't get away from the fact, like Molly's gone on a school trip today, and I said to her, have you got a notebook? And she was like, Mummy, we will write our notes on our phone. I was like, oh yes, of course you will. That made me feel about 960. But that is the response. The kids will use the phones for their notes, and they think I'm nuts if they think I've got a notebook.
Can I just say, right, all of my stuff is still written down in everything I do. I can't, I'm like an old lady. I told you I've got a blanket, a notebook, a pen. Katie, I was thinking about this in the week, and I really wanted to ask you, and I'd love to ask Anthony as well, actually. If say Molly came to you and she was like, or any of them really, and they were like, Mum, I can't decide if I want to go and be a lawyer in London, or if I want to pursue a career in equestrianism. How would you respond to that?
Well, funny enough, we had lots of conversations with Molly. She's sort of starting to think about her A levels. And my answer is the same for all three of my children. Do what you love. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Do what you're passionate about, because then it doesn't become a job per se. Well, obviously it is, but you've got to love it. You've got to have that passion and spark. You're going to be doing it for a long time, but also do something that has a level of flexibility, perhaps. I think we're living in a different age and world now, not so much tied to your desk. Interestingly, Molly has got 2 chosen careers, 3 possibly, at the moment, and obviously things can change. She is interested in being a professional rider, being an equine vet, or doing something creative. So I admire all of those. So her A-level choices will probably be biology, chemistry, and photography. So if she does go to vet school, fantastic. If she does pursue professional riding, fantastic. If she does pursue, she's very creative, artistically creative. So that's also another option. So at this point, don't narrow it down too much. Do what you love, and do have a form of a goal. Let's have, and this is what she said. I mean, her ideal world would be to become a vet and do some sort of team stuff, or even ride at that sort of level for teams. But let's be honest, horses are expensive, and you can count the number of professional riders on maybe 2 hands. So I think you've got to be realistic. So that's my advice to all of my children: is do what you love.
And Katie, just asking you about that, we've talked a lot about Molly, but what interests Freddie and Poppy? Like, what do they like as little people?
Freddie is massively into any sport. Football and golf are his favourites. He's also done really well with riding. He went to Pony Club Camp last year on a gorgeous lone pony called James, and by the end of his week he was doing cross country and all sorts. And he's a really loving, happy boy. As long as he's not too far away from food, sport, and his computer, then he's happy. Boys, I find they're not very complicated. I think girls can be a little bit more complex, at this stage anyway. But he's a delight, and he is very protective of his sisters, and they have a very good relationship. Poppy is our firecracker. She is certainly not a shrinking violet, and when Poppy's walked into a room. Hugely bright and never dull. She is confident and loves her riding, and her pony is as sassy as she is.
I think I've met that pony, haven't I?
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
And she just started her BD sort of pathway, and she started doing affiliated competitions, and she loves it. And to watch Molly and Poppy together is quite magical. Don't get me wrong, it's also quite challenging in the sense, like the other day, one was competing at one venue, the other one was competing somewhere else, sort of an hour and a half away, at different ends of the day. But they were great. They supported each other. One of them helped the other get ready. They've got their own Instagram, dressage with the pals, which they've just recently set up, and it's sort of tracking their journey through the affiliated competitions. Molly alone's got, I think, about 10,000 Instagram followers. So they have a lot of fun putting this together. Poppy is very lucky because obviously her elder sister is sort of carving the pathway in front of her. I think she's like a sponge. She learns, she watches everything.
She's also got Molly's old ponies when she moves off of them. So that's quite lucky.
That's it. She's really lucky.
I know. Molly's putting all that hard work in.
Well, but Molly's lucky. She's going to have mine when she moves up to juniors and riding. She'll be stealing my horses and be under 25.
Katie, there's something I wanted to ask you actually about your coaching, and I know you do a lot of coaching, and I'm desperate to come down and have some lessons because I know that you're fantastic at it, because of the way you are as well. But how do you think having your kids, bringing them up, has translated into your coaching? Do you think it's made you a different coach to what you would have been without them?
Yeah, potentially. I think with children, they're real levelers, aren't they? I think you have to learn to be patient. You have to multitask. You have to have this ability to, one's asking you one question, one's asking you something else, and then your phone's ringing or something else happening. That ability to sort of spread yourself quite thin. I think in terms of how you coach children and young adults is relatively different from how you'd coach an adult. I think I have a slightly different approach to how I do it. But then I think from my coaching style and my sort of ethos, it's very much an individual thing. How does that person learn? What's their sort of motivation and goal? And really understanding what makes them tick. I think that's really important that you build a relationship. I get a lot of riders that have that lack confidence or have had a few wobbles, or others that need to be pushed in a certain direction, others that want to achieve a certain goal in a certain time frame. That's 4 very different types of people. So I think with being a mum and sort of having to use a lot of empathy, I think that does absolutely translate to coaching. That's my personal style.
And do you have like a certain type of person or rider horse combination that you prefer to coach? Is there like when you get someone come through the door that is this, you're like, yes? Is there any of those?
People that really are passionate about it, that really want to be there, that have a goal in mind, that's realistic. Sometimes you get people saying, well, I want to be doing Grand Prix by the end of next year. And you're thinking, well, the horse is probably working at elementary. So I think that's quite a difficult.
Well, Katie, we all want that.
Exactly. So I think it's really about its mindset. It's people are investing their time and effort and money in it. You want to be able to make a difference to the horse and rider. You want to feel that every session you do, you've made an improvement, and that they feel inspired when they go away. That's what it's got to be about. And if you're not doing that, I don't think you've fulfilled your job.
I've got a practical question actually to ask you about mums in particular, and we get a lot of messages already we've had a lot of messages already on social about how difficult it is to get going. We actually did a podcast about this, to get going after you've had a baby, because your muscles are like jelly in a lot of places. Have you got any advice, because having had 3 kids and being a coach yourself, on how to get back to riding form, and if you ever do?
Yeah, I absolutely think you do. Let's take a scenario where you perhaps haven't ridden for a number of months. You may have had a C-section, or you've physically gone through a lot, right? So I would start initially by doing some groundwork with the horse, and actually spending some time working them, watching them from the ground. I don't mean lunging them within an inch of their life. I mean some poles, some long lining, even if they're sensible enough, you can walk them up and down the driveway or up and down the path or whatever. Just spend some time. It will get you fitter. It will get you back to being around the horse again. If, for example, you haven't been doing that side of it. If you're nervous about getting on board, get someone else to get on board and watch the horse be ridden. I think that's quite useful, and I think that's something that people shouldn't shy away from. Have some eyes on the ground the first few times you ride, and do it in bite-sized pieces. Don't go, well, I'm going to go and ride a dressage test next week. Do 10 minutes and get off. That's okay. The horse isn't going to mind whether he's done 10 minutes or 40 minutes, but just give yourself time to adjust back to it. Yeah, just not try to rush it and not try to think I've got to be back at that competition and put too much pressure on yourself. Some people are lucky and they ping back to shape and they're back on horses within a heartbeat, but others aren't, and you have to go at your own pace.
KAC, that's our clip right there for our mums and followers. That's our clip. That's the best advice ever. The groundwork. Katie, I've just got to tell you quick. My thoroughbred got kicked in the field, and he has got a fractured pelvis, and so I'm going to take that advice, and hopefully he will come back at some point and I can start off with the ground stuff, which I think is a really great shout. So I think it'll work whether you've had a baby or your horse is injured.
I think it's that's this pressure, isn't it? Putting too much pressure on ourselves. So suddenly we've got to be back and in the saddle and doing X, Y, and Z. It doesn't really matter what the time frame is, but just be kind to yourself. And the horse won't care whether it's a short session or a long session.
Agreed.
Talking of giving yourself time, Katie, what does the time of 2024 look like for you, for Nodwood House, for your family? What's happening for you this year?
Oh, I'm super excited about this year. I personally need to lose weight. Let's be honest. We've all I have piled on a few pounds. And so my goals for this year are to lose weight and to ride one of my horses in tailcoats. So I want to ride the PSG on one of my more advanced horses. That's a personal goal that I've set myself. And I don't know about other people, but I'm very much, if I can get myself in the right mindset, get myself fit and healthy, that triggers a lot of other stuff for me. So I sleep better, I feel better, I have more energy, and so that is my personal goal, is to wear my tailcoat and ride one of my PSG, but I have to be lighter than I currently am in order to do it. So that's a personal thing. Coaching wise, I'm doing my next level of British dressage exams, and I've got my final piece of my assessor piece coming up. So I hope to get both of those in the bag for 2024. Rehabilitation wise, continue to work with some lovely clients and help them improve their horses that are on their own journey. So that piece is obviously ongoing. To continue to improve and enhance Nodwood, we've got some really exciting additions to our dressage arena outside. We are basically simulating an international arena here with judges' boxes, flowers, music, mirrors. So we're really, really lucky to be able to train in the best facilities we can. And from the girls' perspective with their riding, Molly has ambitions of trying out some of the team selection, and Poppy wants to continue obviously on her journey with her affiliated competitions. So we actually have a really busy year coming up, and we're really excited about all of that. But in there, it's really important to carve out the time that I spend it with my boys as well. So with Anthony and Freddie, and that we build in family time as well. So I was really clear as I closed out 2023 what were my goals for 2024. And in order to achieve those goals, I've had to say no to certain things. And I'm only now in my 40s learning to say no. I've always been someone that said yes, 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 yes. I'm going to do more, 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 more. But actually, you end up not being able to achieve some of the things you want to achieve, or disappointing others in a way that you can't just simply do everything. So it is back to that sort of corporate upbringing of having goals and sticking to them. But I do find personally that one is interconnected to the next. And I've been very clear about what I want to achieve in 2024, which I'm really excited about.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you. I know I feel like all of these things are just like, we're going to be on the sidelines cheering for you all, which would be amazing. Well, I think this has been such an interesting episode, and I hope for our listeners that, you know, they've just really enjoyed getting to know you a bit more and getting to hear a bit more about Nodwood and your family. Is there any? We always end an episode with one lasting question, and this question, maybe you feel like you've got too many things that you'd want to say for this, but we always ask, what is the advice you would give to any expecting equestrian parents? I feel like you've got a wealth of things that you could tell us, but if there was one thing, what would it be?
Get prepared in the sense that you've got lots of support around you for people, you know, in terms of help. So help with baby, help with horse, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I was always like, oh, I'm not sure I can do it all myself. I'm going to do it every single bit. I'm going to do it myself. Actually, when your friends say, can they help, say yes, and do take them up on that offer. And don't try and be a hero of trying to do it all yourself. You will go through highs and lows, a lot of highs, big deprivation, but my goodness, it's worth it. But I think plan ahead, get your support network good and strong, and get the sleep in before the baby arrives. No, I'm joking.
I think that's amazing advice. I going back to what you said, that's what I'm going to take from this, is the pause. Take 5 minutes a day to just pause. I love that. I absolutely love that bit of advice. I think we've all had quite a lot of advice from this podcast. And Katie, you continue to inspire us. You're absolutely amazing, as are your lovely family. If anybody ever wants a lesson from Katie, they get in touch with Nodwood House, because you will love it there. But don't tell her that you want to do Grand Prix before the end of the year. Thank you so much. We've absolutely loved having you on, and best of luck with everything this year.
Thank you so much.
That's the Equestrian Mums Club. Katie, what do I need to say now?
We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to another episode from the Equestrian Mums Club. It's been great to have you along for the ride. We've been your hosts, Katie Allen Clark and Sophie Conway. Make sure to hit the follow button to hear more from us as we dig deeper into the world of ponies and parenthood. And until next time, stay smiling, safe, and stay sane.